All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today to discuss ESG, sustainability, and infrastructure energy management. This is Janset Ans. I support one of our top tier customers at Tech Mahindra from a network services perspective. And we are joined here today by the individuals who support the account sales, as well as several members of the support teams for these top tier accounts. What we would like to share with you today is some lessons learned from our engagements with other telcos on the ESG journey. We will also focus on the solution for building energy management, which is an area that comes up as it's relevant to data centers, building energy management in general. So we will have a deeper dive on that one. We are joined today by two experts, Sandeep Chandna, as well as Raj Paul. Sandeep is part of Tech Mahindra, and he has 25-year industry experience and has been working with telcos over the past 10 years on EHS, ESG, and corporate sustainability. He has led Tech Mahindra to a leading position in terms of the sustainable corporations worldwide, with many recognitions, including the Global 100 Most Sustainable Corporations, the Clean 200 list, also on the Dow Jones Sustainability Index, as well as many other recognitions. We're also joined by Raj Paul. Raj has 22 years of experience in the IoT and automation industry. He's passionate about sustainability and is helping organizations across the globe to set up and manage their GRI reporting and SBTs. He's the CEO of Inferrix, who has built one of the most comprehensive wireless smart building IoT stacks for data center and building energy optimization and ESG. So with that, I will be handing it over to Sandeep.
Thanks so much, Jensen. Thank you. Thank you so much. So just to put the perspective, we take a step back. In Tech Mahindra, we started this journey almost 1.5 decade back. This was around 2008, 2009 that this role was given to me as a Chief Sustainability Officer. At that point of time, the world was still trying to figure out, how or what would be basically the corporate sustainability role. When I got this role, I was asking people, they said it's more of a CSR kind of a role. So you will have to work with NGOs and, see that where your journey is going to start. But when I went to the team saying that, okay, this is the role that we need to do. The point that came out, no, it's not CSR. It is something to do with green. Then somebody told me, okay, you'll have to plant trees. I was like, okay. It's a good job, much better than, okay. So now the time changed. We started looking at what exactly it meant. So it meant about social governance and how you're really looking at your impact on the environment part of it. So with that practice in mind, we started putting up some basic processes in place, saying that how do we really track our carbon emissions? Is there a way to look at scope 1, but that's your direct, indirect, and whatever has been happening through your suppliers as scope 3 and other parts of it. So we started, ring fencing or putting a scope around all these emissions as part of the whole journey. After these emissions were captured, maybe for a year, then the next task started of getting it assured. Means whatever data we had, it was a mandatory guideline saying that it has to be assured by a third party. So that means there was an assurer who would come and look at this data. This was, again, has to be the likes of KPMGs, Deloitte, and others as such. So while there were assurances being given, there was a carbon footprint at a corporate level, what was being reported. The thing started getting more complex in terms of, how the scope 3 emission has to be reported. Now, a company of our stature where we have about more than 1.5 lakhs in Indian numbers, and how do you really track these employees who are traveling from home to office and office to home, and then you capture their emissions of their travel? Uh, a humongous task. How do you do it? We didn't know at that point of time. We again started to look at, is there a technical way? Is there a logical way? So, it was a very complex exercise to look at scope 3. Even today, the world is still trying to figure out how the scope 3 emissions are being mapped. So that still continues to be a major problem. Uh, Journey kept on moving on and on. And today, as I stand in front of you, very proudly, I lead the world today. The Tech Mahindra leads the ESG journey. Can we come to the next slide, Raj? Yeah, sorry. Uh, so with that in mind, we were just looking at, what is it that a Tech Mahindra could do with itself and with its customers. And that's the time when we started looking at, the ESG offerings and say that whatever best practices we have learned, can we put it within our customers? Uh, the ESG trends that we see today, definitely the regulations are going much stricter, both in Europe as well as in US and other countries. The reporting guidelines are around reporting of human rights, the reporting of the carbon footprints of scope 1, scope 2, scope 3, and specifically in terms of supply chain. The third aspect is on the board governance, how the board is managing its employee ratios, the percentage of performance of median between the CEO salary and the regular employee salary. So lot of such initiatives or a lot of such parameters are being mapped by most of the regulatory or by the rating agencies as such. Let's go to the next one. Yeah. And ESG has become a very prominent subject because of simple reason. One is that it really enhances the corporate reputation. The better you are, it really brings a better image in front of the customers as well. COVID has started something very, very, very important. That is, if a company is more compliant towards ESG, the company has been able to come out of the ESG related challenges much simpler. Means if they have their business continuity plans, they could come out much faster. And the same was with us uh, when the COVID hit all of us. There was not even a single day wasted in terms of our employee billing or looking at what could really impact our business. So because we were compliant, we had done this business continuity exercises on a regular basis. We could come out of this without any challenges, and the work from home continued without even a single complaint from the customer. Same was in terms of it does also attract the employees. The employees tend to stay longer with you, so the attrition level definitely brings in a much more attention. Let's go to the next slide. From an offerings perspective, as we said that uh, we are able to baseline a customer today, that where a customer is in its ESG journey, we're able to do a baselining. Suppose that we're also able to set up a roadmap that where the customer wants to reach to his or her ESG journey. Then there are solutions around IoT based. There are some solutions on robotics. There are some solutions around packaging. Then there are some solutions around renewable energy. All those solutions will help customer meet its ESG targets or its ESG ranking. So those solutions we have as a standalone solutions. Uh, I mentioned about the reporting. Tech Mahindra is the only company in the world which is reporting on all the 5 frameworks. It's GRI, CDSB, TCFD, SASB, and even on SDGs. So we know reporting more than anyone else. And then that's why we're going back to our customers and saying that, yes, We can help you with these regulations, which have really come as a surprise to all of us, but we can help you minimize this pain to help get this data and report in a better way. For this, we've also built up a platform. This is an end-to-end ESG platform, which really measures, captures, uh, and also sees that how the improvement can happen in our reporting, and also reduction in our carbon emissions and improvement in our ESG parameters as well. So uh, just to put it in a larger perspective, can we go to the next slide? Yeah. On the left hand side, we have all the consulting offerings where we are looking at something like net zero data modeling, something like we are helping our customers put their science-based targets, life cycle assessments. We are helping them with the audits. As per the GRI indicated, the first step of ESG is around materiality issues. So that's a place where we are helping our customers work with their stakeholders and take the targets around their key issues as well. Of course, then comes the next IoT-based solutions where we have building management, the energy building management systems, which Raj is going to cover in a larger extent now. And same is in terms of data center reduction, energy reduction programs, which Raj is going to cover in the next few slides. We are also doing a lot of work around smart cities. So, whether it's smart, the way of looking at how the smart waste is being disposed of, or how smart lighting is happening. So we're doing a lot of work around that in India, and some work we've also done in UK, in Milton Keynes as such on this part. For the supply chain logistics, definitely we have a supply green logistic platform where we ensure that all the deliveries are reached to the customers, end customer in the shortest span of time and without more of carbon emissions. Last not the least, we're also looking at how we can help our customers with the ESG talent. That is in terms of which are the customers which will need which kind of talent. So whether you need an ESG analyst, or whether you look at ESG consultant, or whether you look at ESG manager. So all those talent pool is currently available with us. And in this last slide, I'm just trying to showcase to the world saying that no one company has an end-to-end solution. But what we have done is just to build an end-to-end story for all our customers so that we become their end-to-end journey partner. We have partnered with various companies around the globe to see that we are able to meet their end goal. So like if in Unison is more about health and safety, Sustain is more about the life cycle assessment, ICA is more about the CDP reporting, ENY we know are the best in the reporting part of it. Inferrix, Raj is going to cover. They're the best in the energy reduction programs with their solutions. Same as TQ is with their renewable energy solutions. So all these partners have been brought on board, and all these partners are playing a major role as we are going to all our customers. So with this, Raj, I'll leave it to you to start with. Thank you. Raj, you're on mute. Yeah, thanks, Raj.
Thanks. Thanks, Sandeep, and thanks for the introduction, Jan. So in my presentation, the idea really is to share with you how we are operationalizing some of what Sandeep has just shared in terms of setting targets, or in terms of having reduction plan. And the focus really on my part of the presentation is on scope 1 and scope 2. Yeah. So I'm not really going to cover much on the supply chain side, but more on scope 1 and scope 2. And so yes, so as we all understand, communication service providers are a major contributor to global GHGs, even greater than the aviation industry, right? And a large part of it is actually contributed by the cooling systems that are used either in buildings or in the network side of things, or the warehouses across the entire infrastructure portfolio, energy usage is a significant part, and especially in the US, that really means 90% of it is because of electricity usage. Yeah? So this is where our focus is on trying to see how we can reduce this and thereby help organizations or telcos achieve their GHG goals that they've set out to achieve in the shortest possible time. I've already mentioned to you the focus really is on scope 1 and scope 2. Scope 1 and scope 2, I'm assuming that all of us on the call understand. It's the energy that we buy and the energy that we directly consume through our facilities or through our employees or through our vehicles and so on and so forth. Yeah. So, we've talked about both net zero and ESG. Obviously, there is an overlap between both of them. The presentation that Sandeep touched upon also covered both ESG and net zero, and some of the use cases that I'm going to talk about will also cover both those. I think it's mandatory in many countries now to formally report on their ESG parameters, and this can be against any standard. I mean, we can take the GRI standard as a reference here, but essentially what I've put on the slide are the most common areas that lend themselves to automation, right? A significant part of the GSI, of course, is, the GRI standards, of course, is not necessarily, technology driven, but it's policy driven or behavioral, and the attitudes and so on and so forth. So if you look at ESG, we can help reduce and process waste, reduce water usage, understand the effluent qualities, the water quality, and also focus on health, safety, and well-being of the employees, the staff, the contractors, and also customers if the business is such, right? From a net zero perspective, the key objective is to reduce both operational carbon and embedded carbon. Although this presentation is largely focused on operational carbon, because for the as-built environment, there's not much we can do on the embedded side as we stand today. So where do we really start? I think that's the question that many companies ask today. Now, obviously, different countries are in a different stage of evolution, right? So the companies in the US, the companies in Europe, and some of the more progressive countries where companies have already committed to emission reduction targets. And about 3,000 of them have actually signed up to science-based targets. For some of you who may not have heard about science-based targets, it basically provides a scientific approach to defining what the target should be, and also defines a path that you can potentially take to achieve it, right? So the first thing that you need to do, of course, is to baseline, which Sandeep also mentioned as the first step, and which Tech Mahindra can surely help you do. And then, depending on what your base year is, if you're looking to achieve your targets by 2030, which actually is the target year as per the COP26 and other agreements, so on and so forth, your emission reduction factor, or the weightage, or the rate at which you have to reduce emission changes, right? So this particular, some of these factors here have been taken from the science-based target reports or suggestions, and they basically showcase what is the energy reduction factor that people or companies in the communication industry must follow, right? So obviously there are many companies who have clearly set out their agenda, both in terms of scope 1 and scope 2 emissions, and also to some extent on the scope 3 emissions. Some companies have clear ambitions on their scope 3 emissions, but many of them have not defined it as such. But on scope 1 and scope 2, which is the basic requirement in the SBTs, people have, or companies have agreed or defined clear targets for achieving net zero, and most of them are in the 2030, 2035 range. Yeah. So I've just posted, a couple of goals from a couple of companies on this slide. But as you notice, for scope 1 and scope 2, most companies are looking at a time frame of 2030 to 2035 to reduce their scope 1 and scope 2 emissions in absolute terms to zero. Yeah. Now, we spoke about this earlier, but 90% of operational carbon, which is really the operations cost of running or from an energy perspective, is due to electricity in the telco industry, in the telecom industry, right? And the path to net zero really has only two options here, right? One is you have to increase the efficiency from an energy perspective, which is minimize the energy consumption as much as possible, and to transition to renewable, and at the same time transition to renewable energy at the fastest rate possible. Obviously, there is a supply-demand gap in renewable energy right now, and that depends on which country you are in. And obviously, this is compounded by all the recent events, which are actually pushing us back. Actually, we are regressing because we are being forced to open our coal-powered plants in many countries in Europe, for instance. So, and I will touch upon point 3 again, but this would include all infrastructure, all kinds of buildings within the telecom industry. And of course, if energy bills account for, roughly 50% of network operation costs, and depends on which country you are in, it is one of the prime areas to target, both from an operations efficiency and from an ESG perspective. So within a telco, of course, if we look at the infrastructure, we have all these entities, or as building types, if I may: towers, switching centers, data center, POPs, office buildings. So any strategy should cover all of them, but obviously prioritize the higher consumption buildings first, for which the baselining is important on a per building basis, which is what we said is the first thing to be put in place, right? We all know the traffic growth is exponential, especially with 5G and so on, and there is an urgent need to cut down energy costs as more consumers come on to the communication networks. The energy usage has significantly increased when you look at it in absolute terms across the globe. Yeah, a lot of energy is really wasted in auxiliary systems, especially in cooling and lighting, because there is no real-time control over them in most of the building types. Yeah. So there is a need to retrofit, there is a need to reduce the carbon footprint and increase efficiency. These are some of the questions we should all be asking. These are the questions that we are asking our clients when we start working with them, and to understand where do we start with them, what are the first things that we should be doing with them, right? So really the idea is that if you are looking to reduce your energy consumption and make your infrastructure efficient, you need to have more granular detail of energy consumption of each service within your building. So for example, lighting is a service, network infrastructure could be a service, lighting is a service, and there are many more critical equipments which are high power consuming equipments in these buildings or in this infrastructure. So the idea is to understand what is being spent or consumed by each of these services, and then set out to define a strategy that will help you bring everything down in a holistic manner. So yes, so I mean the idea really is to have some kind of a mechanism which is real time to measure, which will help you set a baseline, which will help you with more granular data, and then that will define the strategy and approach that should be taking for each building type, and also prioritize the buildings that you should take first in terms of energy reduction. So yes, so now these are the, so that was obviously the theory and the broad overview of what needs to be done, how things can be approached, but this is what is being done in practice. So we're taking some live examples to give you a view of how we are doing it, what are the key asks from the client, which are basically addressing some of the risks and challenges they foresee, right? So this is about setting up a real-time measurement and verification for each infrastructure, each kind of infrastructure, which means buildings or data centers and so on, and looking at power usage, energy usage at a more granular level, right? So this is obviously a tricky area. So clients do not want that any system or any infrastructure, any hardware that is installed should be intrusive. So it should not result or cause any downtime in their existing systems. They don't want any cabling. They want a unified solution which can cover all kinds of loads. So it could be a rack, which could be typically a 32 amp rated up to a large building which is 1200 amp or more, right? So, but almost 90% of buildings fall between 32 amps to 1200 amps kind of range, right? So they want something that's easy to install, can help them understand each major load, and does not need any cabling. And to that extent, this is one of the case studies that we've recently implemented and continue to implement. The overall number of buildings that we have with this telco is 240, out of which we have done 40 buildings in the last 8 months. Yeah, so essentially we are providing wireless three-phase sensors, and these are non-intrusive, so they don't need any shutdown. They can easily be attached to equipments or at the DB level, and this information can either be sent to any of their existing platforms. For example, it could be an existing data lake that you may have, or if the client wants, it can be sent to any BMS that they already have. But the critical thing here is that no shutdown is required. Everything's wireless, and installation per site can be done, or per meter can be done in hours or less than an hour, depending on what kind of building it is. So what does this help us do? So this helps us have more granular data, and an example of that data is has been highlighted here as well. So you actually know how much reduction you have because of various initiatives, because on each service, because you're monitoring them at that level. Yeah. So that's one case study that, or a use case that is the first priority. Moving on, all telcos are then focusing really on their data centers and switching centers and POPs and so on and so forth. And I have taken an example of a data center, but obviously the same applies to an MSC or any kind of other network infrastructure building as well. So the idea really is how to improve the power utilization efficiency. And in this case, of course, we've started a project with a large entity where we've done 26 sites, and these are data center sites, so these are large, small data centers in one country, where, of course, apart from the energy aspect and the ESG aspect, they also wanted a centralized view of some of the other infrastructure, like fire alarm systems or water leakage, and they didn't have a centralized view. Almost all infrastructure management is being done discreetly in many telcos across the world, even today, right? So at a building perspective or a building infrastructure level, there is no centralized view. So also this entity really wanted a centralized view of all the infrastructure, and but the focus was really on reducing the carbon footprint by improving the PUE. So how did we do it? Or how are we doing it, or what are the best practices around it? It's really about ensuring that there is a uniform thermal profile to ensure that there is no overcooling, and maximize efficiency of the cooling systems by running them in a way that they don't overcool, or there's no leakage in the system, right? So this involved us setting up a range of sensors and controllers, most of which were wireless. So the idea really was to monitor the temperature at each rack level, hot and cold aisle level, and see if we can balance the heating and cooling in a manner that, no rack is actually overheating significantly, and hence resulting in the entire data center being overcooled, right? So it's more about balancing the network infrastructure or the server infrastructure across racks. This also helps capacity plan, yes, but what we were really doing was measuring performance at a granular level and ensuring there's no overcooling and using. I have not gone into more technical details about how we are doing fresh air handling units and so on and so forth. I'm just talking at a very high level of some of the major things that we did. But even even these initiatives help us reduce the energy consumption by 10 to 15%. Again, I've touched upon this, and the core idea again from a customer perspective was that this is done with no downtime, with negligible cabling or minimal cabling. And minimal cabling also means that the embedded carbon footprint of your solution is low because you're not really using cabling. So so this is just to give you a heat map of the data center and then optimize, but yes. So that's on the data center side. The other thing that most buildings have not done, or simply because this was never the focus, was focus on smart lighting to ensure that the lighting infrastructure is not always on, right? So lighting does contribute to up to 20% of the building node, depending on the kind of building, kind of business, and so on. So people are looking at trying to see how they can smart enable the lighting. And again, this needs to be done in the shortest possible time, wireless if possible, and so that's where again one of the focus has been. There are still a large part of the infrastructure where LEDs have not been installed. It's surprising, but that's true, right? So a lot of lighting in many of these are still old type sodium lamps or other bulb type lighting. So one, a move to LED, and the other is to move towards automating this and understanding the lighting energy consumption. So to that extent, I mean, again, just taken a case study to just showcase how it's done. But essentially, the way we work is, implement a complete wireless intelligent lighting system. It could be a small infrastructure, and then it can be done at a relay level. So you can actually do a circuit level thing, which means you can control entire rooms wirelessly with one single equipment, or you can do it at a per light basis, depending on what kind of solutions you're looking at, right? So I really wanted to focus on 2 or 3 aspects. I didn't want to go into detail on at a more technical detail on the building side, but I also wanted to showcase that apart from this, there are several other solutions which contribute to or which help you report on your ESG goals, which includes everything from air quality. So when you're talking about well-being in the social aspects of ESG, then you really have to ensure, and I think it's also mentioned in the GRI standards, that you also have to ensure that the noise levels, the luminosity levels, the air quality in the building is appropriate for the well-being of staff and occupants of the building, right? So those are again aspects that we build in. Smart parking, primarily because one of the things that we've noticed is a lot of basement parkings have very high levels of carbon monoxide, and again there are two connotations to it. One is the well-being aspect of it, wherein when the CO goes beyond a certain level, then are the exhausts being triggered? That's one aspect of it. And the second aspect, of course, is to reduce the COs emitted by making the parking more efficient. So again, that is where we're coming in from. Smart washroom is an extension of a well-being use case where the washrooms are clean, they're cleaned at the right time as required. You know how many people are using it during what part of the day to calibrate your cleaning accordingly. So again, this speaks to the to the social part of the ESG aspects of our ESG goals of our organization. So, so yes, so I mean, really, we just wanted to touch upon a few use cases that people or companies are prioritizing right now, and also many of the ESG use cases that we can enable through an existing solutions or existing platforms or existing products we already have. Of course, there are several other options as well from an energy reduction perspective. These are a little more complex, and this require a little more in-depth study before we kind of embark or take actions in this direction. But of course, total power shutdown if equipment is not in use, dynamic shutdowns based on traffic levels, hardware optimization based on each hardware, each network equipment being monitored, antenna angles, all these are possible. But this, I suppose, will be the next phase once the basic energy consumption are addressed. Right. So yeah, so we're really talking about reducing the energy consumption significantly and making it a quick deployment with minimal disruption, and ensuring that the cabling is less, which means the embedded cabling is low, and reducing the automation cost itself, because if you don't do cabling, a large part of your cost goes down with that as well. So that's where we are. So that's the last slide from me. I just wanted to take about 20-25 minutes to cover this. These are your points of contact if you want to reach out to understand more about the solution. But I think the floor is now open, and Sandeep and I are happy to address any questions you may have.
Jagdish, anything specific you were really looking for?
No, Sandeep, I think most of the things has been covered. Really happy with the context has been given rightly.
Sure, thank you.
Okay, well, it seems that we do not have any questions. Thank you, Raj. Thank you, Sandeep. Thanks everyone for joining. The video recording will be made available to individuals who would like it, and do not receive it. You can reach out to myself or Komal. And any further follow-up questions, also feel free to reach out to either one of us again. Thank you for your time, and hope everyone found this useful. And if we, based on feedback, we can dive deeper into any of those other use cases or additional scenarios that were mentioned today. Thank you all.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chandna. Thank you, Raj. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.